But I would say my formula is you got to know yourself, to be yourself, to express yourself, to share yourself.
Okay, welcome back, or welcome to the Finding Mastery podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Michael Gervais, by trade and training, a high-performance psychologist. And I am so excited to sit down with George Mumford for this week's conversation. George is a legend amongst, well, more legends. Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, Phil Jackson, Shaquille O'Neal, countless of other NBA stars, and a never-ending list of Olympian CEOs and artists. They've all worked personally with George to embrace their greatness, to unlock their greatness, to unlock their potential within, and the art of what we might call being human. His strategy, mindfulness. As a teacher, coach, and speaker, George has channeled his life's work into 2 books, The Mindful Athlete, Secrets to Pure Performance, and Unlocked, Embrace Your Greatness, Find the Flow, Discover Success. In these, he uses both instructional wisdom as well as stories of personal pain. And he struggled with addiction, and he walks beautifully through that process to be able to celebrate the challenge of being comfortable with being uncomfortable. George and I dig into the dynamics of highly successful teams, mindfulness, of course, what it means to unlock your masterpiece within, and how sometimes our darkest moments lead to our greatest revelations. Whether you're someone in hot pursuit of a specific goal or someone who just wants to know yourself more fully, I'm pretty sure this is all of us to some degree. This is definitely for you. So with that, let's jump right into this week's conversation with George Mumford. I have a legend. George Mumford is in the studio today. It's been so fun to see your work and to know your work. And your book, Unlocked, is awesome. So you came from a different place than your first book. And this book, I'm just so happy for you that you were able to get what you got down in writing for so many of us to benefit from. So I'm stoked to have this conversation with you. Mm-hmm. And thank you for sharing Unlocked with us.
You're welcome. And I'm happy to be here doing this with you. I feel like we go back a ways, and I've been admiring your work. So obviously your work and the work of so many others has influenced my work. I don't know how you can do this without being able to piggyback or step on the shoulders of the giants that come before us.
Man, that sense. So one, thank you very much. And ditto, because you were a trailblazer early on, introducing this thing
yes,
to elite sport, and when most people weren't ready for it. And so I do want to have a conversation about trailblazing and like how some of the headwinds and how you navigate those spaces, because we're in a world right now that there's lots of headwinds.
Yes.
And I think people can benefit from your insights on how to deal with challenges.
Yes. So I would say you mentioned that I'm coming from a different place here. Mm-hmm. I think the experience of writing The Mindful Athlete, but also being in this space and understanding that there's a process to unlocking, just going through our challenges, and the challenges have a lot to do with getting to the other side. So for me, I didn't see myself as a trailblazer. I just, after getting into recovery and dealing with chronic pain, I was just doing what was in front of me. I had no intention of being a trailblazer or anything, but I knew 2 things. I knew that if I wanted to really learn about this stuff, I had to teach it. And the second thing I knew is if I wanted to keep it, I had to give it away. So the best thing I could do is share my experience, strength, and hope, and just keep serving. And so that's what happened. People would come to me and say, hey, can you do this? And I would do it. And eventually I was in the corporate space, and eventually I left the corporate space to do this thing, do this process, to share my journey. And so to me, it was me getting to that place where I was unlocking, coming from the hell realms, and then, to go from being in a shooting gallery or a crack house and being behind the bench of an NBA championship team. I mean, that's unlocking.
It is unlocking.
And so it was it wasn't like my intention was to be a service, really. It was always about, and I believe my book, The Mindful Athlete, when I wrote that, took 20 years. And I think what got me over the hump was I realized that I could help people. I couldn't do it for me, but I could do it for others. So this element of serving and just being willing to just meet things, embrace everything and say yes to it, and then, change roadblocks into stepping stones. So that's pretty much it. I didn't know, and I remember one of my teacher mentors, Jack Cornfield, said to me one time, man, you brought mindfulness and performance in a way that no one's ever done that before. And I said, oh, I did? Really? Because I wasn't self-conscious. I was just really just doing what I knew to do. And my intention was to help. And by helping others, I was helping myself. So, I mean, here I am since I've been in recovery for going on 39 years this July. And I've averaged over a book a week during that time. And I have more enthusiasm and excitement about life than I've ever had. So this process is something that you can engage in, as Warren Bennett said in his book on becoming a leader. Self-knowledge and self-invention are lifelong processes. So I feel like that's what I'm doing. I'm just sharing my journey of self-discovery with people. And I believe that the greatest adventure we can be on is getting to know ourselves better so that we can serve.
Love that last part, to serve.
Yeah.
You have used your experiences and your unlocks, your insights.
Mm-hmm.
Unlock and insight is they're cousins to each other in many respects. You've used your unique unlocks and insights, your adventure in life, and the process that's helped you during that. That's kind of what you've done with other people. My point is that you've lived it and you shared your story.
Yes.
And then you've shared how to help other people know their story. Okay. What is it like? Because you know that you and I are going to talk about painful times in your life.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, before we go there, the people I love most in this world are those that have gone through to the depths. They've been ragged around by the world and they've faced it and they've squared up with it and they have invested in themselves to heal. They've turned over their need that they can solve everything themselves. And they said, I need to be vulnerable as a beginning step for strength. And you've done it. And you so beautifully have led from that place. So I say that because I come from a place that is really humbled by what it takes to do what you've done. And I'm talking about early life stuff. I'm not even talking yet about what you've done with the Bulls and the Lakers and the Knicks and which is extraordinary stories of its own. But I just want to spend a moment on the early stuff.
Sure.
First, I want to say, Mom, 13 kids, huh? Mom went to 13 kids.
13 kids.
And what number were you?
Number 10.
Number 10.
Yes.
Okay. So you had a bunch of brothers and sisters before
8 sisters, 4 brothers.
8 sisters, 4 brothers. And you were Georgie Porgy.
I was Georgie Porgy. That's right.
And so were you bullied?
No, I wasn't bullied. I wouldn't say bullied. I was encouraged to be tougher.
Yeah.
And I think the reason I don't think is being bullied, because I think the intention was to help me navigate this thing called life in a certain way. And so being a young boy, young man, young child, having super sensitivity or being empathic and picking up other people's stuff, I really didn't know how to deal with that. So they knew that I had to toughen up. And so I would say I wouldn't say bullied. I was sort of forged in the fire, if you will, baptism of the fire, just by saying you have to be tougher. We're worried about you being able to survive in this world.
Did you lose that empathic nature of yourself, or did you at any point in your coming up, or because you definitely have it now?
Yeah. I hit it.
You hit it.
I hit it. I encrusted it in the shell. As I talk about, I was locked down. I was locked in.
Yeah.
Because
and this is why you turned to drugs?
Yes. Yes. And so the drugs and and the other stuff for a lot of reasons, mainly because of pain. I was in pain. I was injury prone. I had a lot of issues. I had chronic stomach issues or GI issues because I didn't realize it was the stress of not being myself, the stress of just hiding and not being able to be true to who I was, but I didn't know I had that. So I was just reflecting on this the other day. And even now, to some degree, I'm still waiting for permission to be able to express myself.
You still are?
In little ways, yeah.
Oh, that's remarkable.
Yeah, and in other words, it's a process. There's times when, and now it's more subtle because it's like, okay, it's like you have, I forget what you call those light switches, the dimmer switches.
Yeah.
So it's like, I'm not all the way down where you can't see the light. I'm up where the light is showing, but there's still some more room to grow. That's what I mean by that. And every once in a while, I'll get hints of, oh wow, I'm waiting for permission, or it's still not totally safe to be that vulnerable and express myself, or to share, let my light shine, or what I call the masterpiece within, being able to express that.
What gets in the way of that for you? Because I think
yes,
I relate.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of people understand that permission thing, which the only way I've worked through that is I had to say, fuck it. Like I can't do that. I can't wait for the world to be just right for me to step in and be okay. So I wish this wasn't the case, but in the commitment to be honest, like I wish I could say I was super fluid and just loving kindness just exuded out of me but it's like I had to have an understanding of anger.
Right.
Because I didn't know another way to say I want to change.
Yes.
And I didn't know another way other than using some agitation, irritation, downright anger sometimes. How do you do it now when you feel that?
Yes. Well, it's this idea of creating this ability to observe my experience uncritically. Yes, and notice, or mindfully. And just to notice things, because part of this process is a revelation. It's like there's things that are hidden, and there's things that are going on that we don't know about until they manifest. So when I say I'm still doing that, I'm meaning that I'm still unlocking, and it's like you have a bunch of stuff in the proverbial, well, not even the closet, but in the basement, and there's a lot of good stuff and stuff not so good in that basement. And so when you open that door, stuff's coming up. Some of the stuff that comes out is not helpful. Some of the stuff is helpful. So I don't know that I was hiding out until I realized, oh, I've been hiding out. So, and that will be reflected in, okay, so you have this ability, but there's more there. What stops you from expressing it? Like you said, it's only when I can start to open and let that what's hidden reveal itself.
And how do you do that?
Well, interesting, by like what I say, by embracing, saying yes, whatever comes up, and then generating the hope and asking the question, what is this? Or just pursuing excellence and wisdom with grace and ease. That's how I do it. I'm trying to understand stuff. So helping others, seeing how other people get stuck, and then reflecting, well, in what ways am I stuck? Or in what ways do I feel like I'm not fully self-expressed? But the process of unlocking is seeing where we're stuck, and seeing where we're not really, we're kind of closing down, or we're just, we're stuck in limbo. We're in survival mode.
So how do you uniquely do it? And there's a two-parter to this.
Yes, yes.
In the present moment when it flares.
Yeah.
Okay. And then also in the quiet recesses when you're alone.
Yes.
So there's two parts to the question. Like, how do you work through that?
I'll give you a prime example. I was working with the Lakers in 2010. They were playing the NBA championship against the Celtics, and when they come to town, I'd work with them. So we had a session that morning before Sunday game, and when I was going into the room where we have breakfast, and then there's the setup to watch film, and the voice said to me, "You don't belong here. They don't want to hear from you." So trauma came, and it was like, okay, get out of here before they throw you out. And I could just observe it. like music, like background music in a restaurant. Just notice it and just focus on serving, doing what I needed to do. So I kept it in the background, just kept it open, but I focused on what I wanted to do and what I knew to do. And I was able to perform and at the same time not beat myself up or worry about it. But that was something that came out of nowhere. Just under the conditions, things happen. You open up, all of a sudden, there's a negative committee or there's some trauma that you're feeling where your body wants to shut down. And you don't, the last thing you want to do is be vulnerable and get up in front of folks in a really critical time and talk to them about, being in the moment and expressing yourself sincerely. So that's how I dealt with it. And then afterwards, I just reflected on it. And I noticed that this is what happens when you open a heart. There's stuff that comes out, and it's our ability to not push it away, not to pull it towards us, but to just let it speak to us in its own language and listen to what it has to say. But what's really happening is there's a healing going on. There's an ability of it getting sanitized by the light, as you will, and just holding it and not doing anything with it, but seeking to understand what it means and how to relate to it in a way where I can actually teach and help other people who are going through things that are unexpected. But at the same time, the idea is to be in the moment, to see it and let it speak to you in its own language. And then there's a lesson there. There's a wisdom that comes out of that. There's a creativity that comes out of just being able to be still and know. So does that make sense? And
100%.
So it is that one way, but there's other ways I would do it depending on the situation. But here's the challenge and the adventure of it. I have no idea how it's going to happen, but it's going to happen. And the way I handle it is going to be different.
Yeah.
In other words, I have to trust the masterpiece within, the wisdom within. If I have mindfulness where I can let things speak to me in its own language and understanding, knowing what am I supposed to do? I'm supposed to be in the moment, see what's happening and relate to it in a way that empowers me and be in a growth mindset. So it's an opportunity and it's a lesson.
So much of what you described is aligned with how I approach it as well. Mm-hmm. There's a spontaneity that is wonderful, and it also is creates that vulnerability, creates space for things to pop up that might not be what you want to hear or see or feel
or convenient,
or that's convenient right now. That's a great phrase or a great idea. And so, the present moment is where we're trying to spend as much time as we can. But in the present moment, like not to be a dualist, but there's negative and positive. There's like hardships and beauty that happen in the present moment.
Right.
And for me, it's the difference, and I'll just string this back around. It's the difference between the concept in sport and maybe business of being clutch versus being in a flow, like the slipstream of flow, which is effortlessly eloquently adjusting to the unfolding. And clutch is like this, I'm going to dominate. Like I'm a force of will, and it's a little bit, it's a very different approach. And you're spending much more time and interest in being in the slipstream of flow as opposed to clutch.
I'm not picking. I'm going to use the one that works.
Yeah. Okay.
You see what I'm saying? There's a wisdom that knows when I got to step up there with as much assertiveness and just meet the force that's coming at me with force, even though it's coming out of love, but it's still dynamic and it's still intense. So it's not judging. I had an experience, because I grew up in a certain part of town, and I remember,
which is code for
I grew up in the inner city in the tough neighborhoods,
which is code for
it's hell, whatever.
That's it.
Yeah, hell. It was a doggy dog. It was very much this kind of situation, and what was I doing? I was going to a part of Boston. It was the North End, and I'm walking with my girlfriend, and I'm seeing a drug deal go down, and I'm seeing shaky characters.
How old are you?
I was, let me see, that was like 87, so I was probably 36 or something like that.
Okay.
And I went into my street mode, and my girlfriend said, well, what's wrong? Because she see me, I went into this, what you talked about, the clutch mode.
Yeah.
And She said, what's wrong? And I said, oh, nothing. But me going into clutch mode prevented people, when they knew, oh, he knows, he sees us, leave him alone.
Mm-hmm.
Don't go there with him because he's not one of these, guys that don't know what time it is. He knows what time it is. And I felt embarrassed by it at first because I felt like, oh, I don't want that side, that part of my life where I'm in the jungle and I gotta be a lion and I gotta meet force with force. I felt, like, okay, I thought I had evolved beyond that. But then I realized, no, that's your inner wisdom telling you that you had to go into that energy mode so that you could neutralize the forces that are out there so that I didn't have to go through. Because as soon as they see, oh, okay, he knows, once they see that I'm a lion also, then they back down. But it's me just being timid and trying to ignore it instead of opening to it and saying, okay, this is a survival skill. That's the reptilian brain kicking in to help me. So that reptilian brain, even though it's fight, flight, and freeze, and it's in survival, if I'm walking across the street and a car's coming, that's the thing that moves me out of the way without me having to reflect on what should I do.
Speaking of being clutch.
Yeah.
Speaking of being great in difficult situations, I'm going to bring up Kobe now.
Mm-hmm.
Was Kobe more clutch or was he more about the flow slipstream?
I think he's more about the flow and the slipstream.
Effortless effort?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, that was the work we did. But I think you come around to it at some point, and each person has had that experience. But sometimes, like I said, when you get met with clutch, sometimes your reaction is to be clutch instead of just, being more like Aikido or Tai Chi, just use their energy against them, be like water and just flow with it, embrace it in a way where you don't have to meet force with force.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, he was, he definitely learned that lesson.
Obviously, you had a lot that you imparted and helped Kobe through his life. And it's a good relationship, as I've come to understand, for you guys. What did you learn from him?
What did I learn from him? What I learned from him is that you have to meet people where they are. You have to meet him where he is and help lead him. They call that leading and pacing in neuro-linguistic programming, NLP. It's always about meeting people as they are, not trying to change them, but helping him to unlock, helping him to be his best version of himself. And so to me, he taught me how to trust that and the tenacity and the never quitting and committing and being creative about his approach to things. He had this ability to expand things and say, I'm going to do this, and I don't have to back away from it, but to see it as an opportunity and to meet that challenge with intelligence, with heart, and with a strong will.
When there's a challenge, he sees it as an opportunity as opposed to a threat.
Yes.
He's got a tenacity and a deep trust, it sounds like.
Right.
The trust is so I can let go and to have effortless
Mm-hmm.
effort. And then a tenacity, which is, I'm curious how those two work together.
Yes.
And then was he trying to be, and I don't want to undersell or give any discount to the first thing I said, which is when there's a challenge, seeing it as an opportunity versus a threat.
Mm-hmm.
That, as Einstein has shared, like there's a fundamental decision we all have to make.
Yes.
The world is either
yes.
hostile or
Right.
safe, right? And you mentioned that in Unlock as
Mm-hmm.
well.
Mm-hmm.
So I've paraphrased, I've paralleled that insight to say we all have a fundamental decision to make in life: is am I going to approach success or avoid failure?
Mm-hmm.
And so he was approaching success, seeing challenges as opportunities.
Right.
Opportunities for being his best or opportunities to be the best?
That's interesting. His best.
He would, if he's in this conversation, he would say, yeah, that's it.
His best, because to be the best, you're comparing yourself with others. In this process, you're competing against your previous best self.
That's right.
And so it's really about you, because that's the only thing you can control, is you being you and you being the best version of yourself.
I'm nodding, checking.
Yeah.
Check. Yes.
Yeah.
And people often ask me, and I'm curious how you'll respond, and I'll say how I answer as well. It's like, what do you mean your best? Like, what do you mean by that? What is the best? Why are we talking about versions? Why aren't we talking like, so there's a subtlety in language here that
Mm-hmm.
I think can, if we're not careful, becomes amorphous and escapes like the concreteness required of, I know what it means.
Yes.
You know what this means.
Yes.
Kobe knew what this means.
Right.
Okay. So how do you describe
being your best?
Being your best.
Yeah. It's creating space between stimulus and response. And in that space, you have the freedom and power to choose in alignment with your values and the goal that you have. So being your best means, based on the intel you have, your mindfulness and the wisdom, knowing the basic essentials and what your goal is, being your best, meaning having an intention and being able to express it honestly or sincerely or authentically.
It's honestly, George, I can't remember the last time we got deep on some ideas. It was probably at Wisdom and Wisdom 2.0, the conference. And we think so much alike. It's quite remarkable, actually, because we've come from very different approaches. And so it's refreshing and also startling in some respect. I go, yes.
So why do you think I said what I said at the beginning of this? Now you understand what I said?
Well, no, I don't.
When I said giants and you see, because you meet what you mirror, and also when you can see the greatness in others, that means you can see the greatness in yourself.
I mean, I'm uber humbled. And at the same time, where I was going with it is that I've had this pretty rich understanding. I hope you'll co-sign it, but you might not, because you've spent so much time with like greats, is that game recognizes game. And so you can see it based on what you just said. So yes, check it. And then the other is that it feels like there is a language that is unique to people that understand and have committed their life towards their very best, towards unlocking, to use your phrase, it's actually the tag that we've been using in our business for a long time, unlocking the potential within. That's how we talk about it. And by the way, my mission, my personal philosophy is that every day is an opportunity to create a living masterpiece. I mean, so the parallels here are phenomenal. But let me go back to my point, is that game recognizes game and there's a shared language. And that we end up talking about the same things in a very similar way, independent of the industry or craft, but it's that pursuit that gets to that shared language. And have you found that to be true? Or would you say that a violinist that's trying to be his or her very best, and a basketball player and an entrepreneur and a rabbi are going to talk about distinctly different things?
Well, they're talking about the same thing, but they're using the language that they're accustomed to. So if you have a PC, you're going to use certain software. If you use a Mac, you're going to use the iOS. You're going to use a certain software, but the end result is the same. Yeah. It's just that how you can talk about it, it might be different, but it's the same thing, because our perception, my conditioning, and my state of mind are going to have an impact on what I can see, what my perception is on any given day. And so on some level, it's about, if you're really present and you're really sincere and you're really vulnerable, you'll see what's there.
How about that?
And the truth will set you free.
And it will scare the shit out of you.
Yes.
Right?
No, yes, because that's the part. I talk about it a little bit in the book, but I don't think we give it enough emphasis. And that is, one side of the coin is freedom. The other side of the coin is uncertainty and anxiety. And so there's, and this goes back to Kierkegaard, Søren Kierkegaard, 1846. He called it the alarming possibility of being able. When we embrace that, so what's the anxiety tell us, or the change? It's a lesson. If we walk through it, not only do we get to the other side, but we build up resilience to be able to do it again and again and again. Because that's what's required. Is people think, oh, you got this good achievement. Yeah, that's great. But there's some anxiety and uncertainty, and there's some people that aren't happy with you achieving what you achieved for whatever reason. So, I don't have to, if you talk about the Buddha being stoned, Christ being crucified, I don't need to say any more than that. There's always going to be somebody that doesn't like the light.
How about it?
And so being able to be true to yourself and do what you know to do, and to embrace the anxiety and uncertainty and to use it as a lesson, or like a doorway, you just walk through it. but I'm not saying you walk through it painlessly, because I like to say no struggle, no swag. So it's going to be a struggle. And if you're struggling, you're learning, and that's how you build up your strength. So without both sides of the coin, you don't have the result. You got to have both.
Yeah. So I talk about this, like if you think about building capacity to be able to handle more,
right?
Is that there's a panic feeling. There's an edge that we need to get to and stay in that edge as long as we can. And it feels like it's the panic signal is it's a tripwire for anxiety, but it's panicking. And most people want to just retreat, find high ground right now, do whatever I can. And the extraordinaries, as you'll come to recognize, and you yourself being one of those, to be able to stay in that space as long as I possibly can, as long as you can. And then what I found is that what they do is instead of going, there's an extended period of time in that panic. And instead of dipping all the way back down to comfort, they stay in that edgy space, but decrease it and then push back up because they know how hard it is to get there. And that's where all of the truth telling takes place.
That's right.
Okay. So
I call it getting comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Yeah. I feel like that gets thrown around so much.
Yeah. But what I mean by that is you build up an endurance and a tolerance of discomfort, because here's the interesting thing.
Wait, before you get the insight, what is uncomfortable for you?
It depends. It depends what you're talking about. What's uncomfortable for me, it varies, but what's uncomfortable for me is pain.
Physical pain?
Physical pain or emotional pain.
Pain?
Or whatever, or just being in the unknown.
That's
just not knowing and having to trust that things are going to work out.
Do you believe that they're going to work out?
Yes.
But then even with that belief system, when you're in the unknown, like I don't know what you're about to say and you don't know what I'm about to say. So in this unknown, what are you trusting?
I'm trusting that if I embrace whatever comes up, generate the hope that even if I make a mistake, I'm going to learn from it. So it's not about making a mistake. It's about saying yes to it and being present for it and doing the best I can do, based on what I know now, but trusting that it's going to be a learning opportunity, that the universe is friendly and I'm aligned with how things are, so I don't have to deny or destroy or remove anything. I just need to be still and know I need to stay in that eye of the hurricane, and I'm going to see what I need to see. And there's a wisdom and creativity that comes out of that silence that is powerful and helps me to change the roadblock into a stepping stone.
Okay. So that's how your process works. And then let's imagine, and I see why athletes would say, yeah. Right? Like, yeah. And
CEOs too.
CEOs too. And let me add an element to it. It's just athletics is so concrete, where CEOs, it's less observable, their performance, right? You see the outcome quite amazingly from Wall Street or whatever. But let's say that you add another layer of intensity is if you don't deliver today, let's say in this conversation, just like an athlete has a finals or tryouts or whatever, that you don't get the reward, the external reward, the later reward. You might get the internal unlock, but you might not make the team. You might actually lose a bonus. You might fill in the blanks on the external later rewards. How do you help folks through that? Like I'm thinking, I know how much time you spent with Michael Jordan. So how would you, I don't know Michael. And what a force though. Steve Kerr told me a story now about when he and Michael were practicing.
Yes.
And Steve, like the way, before I get to the question, Steve says to me, he goes, Mike, it was intense practicing with Michael. He says practices were way more intense than games because I had to go against the most fierce competitor in basketball, maybe on the planet every day.
Yes.
He says, he tells about this one story, which I'm sure you know about. I think you were with the team during this time, but Jordan's dribbling the ball up this in practice and, Steve's trying to guard him. And Jordan, steps to left, right, fade away, puts it in and kind of looks at Steve like, okay, what are you going to do now? Next play down, Michael runs the same kind of jab, step move, fade away. And he looks at him again like, what are you doing? Third play in a row, same move, jab, step, fade away. and then walks up to Steve and is like, what's wrong with you? When are you going to step up? When are you going to stop bullshitting around? You know, and I'm paraphrasing here. And then unloads on him, gives him a right cross, right into his jaw. And so Steve says to me, Mike, like, it's kind of different being around these guys. Like, it was very different being around Jordan on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
So when I'm asking that question, I'm coming from Steve's perspective and kind of obviously what I know historically about Michael. How would you help him when he's got that deep drive to be? I think he wants to be the best. I think Kobe was about being personal best, but it feels like Michael wants to be the best. How did you help him through that, if my assumption is right?
Yes. So it's always about you competing against your previous best self. So you're right. You can do your best and have a great game and still not win or still not make the team. That's my definition of a winner.
Is?
Because you did everything you could do and the result is a result. And there's some good that came out of that that's going to carry you in some other area. And maybe it's like I'm thinking of, was it Tony Gonzalez? Yeah. Basketball was
one of the great tight ends.
Yeah,
in the
but
NFL.
Basketball was his first love.
That's right, and he was,
you know, and he was
good at it.
he was really good at it, but he wasn't great
North
at
Carolina?
it. And no, actually, I think he was at Cal.
Was he?
Yeah, I think he was at Cal.
Okay,
because my nephew used to train him when he was a basketball player.
Okay,
so you could say
I can hear our fact checkers right now.
Yeah. So think about this. Yeah, but think about it this way. Where we went, then we can go with Antonio Gates. Where I can name a bunch of these basketball players that
Jim Graham.
Yeah, I remember playing against him when he's at Miami. No, I mean I was working with Boston College.
Okay,
so I meant our team playing against him.
Okay,
so I know all these guys. Antonio Gates, you know, we played against them. You don't. It's not about the end result. It's always the journey. It's about you doing the best you can, and that energy, that accomplishment is going to follow you, and it's going to lead to something else. So it may be like for me, I got hurt playing basketball and, injured, couldn't play, ended up getting addicted to pain meds and illegal drugs. And here I am. So
yeah, I mean,
you
what an
know,
adventure you've had.
You don't know where it's going to take you, but it's going to take you it's going to take you where you need to go.
I know where counterpoint. I know where I want to go. I want to be in the amphitheater. I want the ball in my hand and I want to drain it.
Yeah.
And I hear you, George, but like, what's all this stuff? Like, I want to be great.
Yes.
Every moment of my, right. So, okay. Counterpoint.
So my whole point is, you can be great, but sometimes we don't, it's not the results, it's the effort. That's all we can control is our effort and our attitude. And the results that happen are going to happen. But the thing is, that's when you're still locked up. You're still locked because you think it should be this way instead of being with what is.
I'm down with it. And so when you've got somebody who is relentless that would beat up a teammate because they're not demonstrating that they're solving the problem. I'm talking about Jordan.
Yeah.
Was Jordan like, I get you? Or was Jordan like, okay, you want me to switch everything up? Like, how did that go? No,
it went because I talk about, what do you want and who do you need to be to do what you want to do? So let's just talk about that situation with Steve Kerr. That's not necessarily who he is. He got
that's not who Michael is.
Yeah.
It was a moment in time,
That's a moment where the clutch took over from the flow. Using your language.
Yeah.
Okay. So all of us can have a moment of unclarity or what I call the hindrances where greed or aggression took over and he wasn't able to see clearly and be in the moment.
This is why you add the word grace.
Yes.
To your personal philosophy, right?
Well, that's one of the reasons, yeah.
That's one of the reasons.
Because you have to have grace and you realize when you know better, you do better. So even the grace make mistakes and maybe you push it too much. But the whole idea is to know that you push it too much and apologize and redo, reset. And then, that's the thing. Forgiveness is really important. So, okay, I'm sorry I did that. I was out of control, but that was just a moment in time. That's not who I really am. It was just that I got hijacked. I got emotionally hijacked. You know how that
100%.
works. So when you're in fight, flight, or freeze, or when you're not in love and a willingness to compete And, you got to know micropsychology. Usually when he comes at you like that, you got to come back at him. And even if you'd push him and knock him down, then he would say, okay, now this guy got fight. So now I know that he's going to be in the trenches with me when it gets tough. He's not going to be, going to back off. So that might be his psychology. I don't know. I haven't talked to him about it. But I will say this, that when you make a mistake like that, and when you cross the line, which is very easy to do when you're in that clutch, as you talked about, once you cross it, that's not a problem as long as you apologize and you forgive and forget, and then you begin again. So that's the thing. So we get this idea, we keep locking us into a way of being because we had an activity. So we got to separate the action from the person. Or you see what I'm saying? But we don't do that. It's convenient for us to say, oh, he's just like that, or he's a bully, and he's this and that. And you got to look at the content in the context of what's happening. We don't do that. We take the content and put it in any context and think it's equal. It's not. It has to be at a certain time. Plus, we don't know what MJ was going on in his mind. And we don't know what his relationship with Kurt was off of the court, which might influence what happened on the court. I'm not saying it did, but I'm just saying that possibility exists.
That's right. Yeah, I understand. I love the context and content perspective. I really appreciate that, because things that were happening 200 years ago would never fly now, right? And so, or let's call it 600 years ago, would never fly now.
That's
and
right.
so, yeah, so I really appreciate that. So let's go true self. Let's go best self, true self, small self. Okay, so best self, we're saying like there's this tension to get up into that experience of best self. There's a tension of letting go and trusting required.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not all, you can't force your way into best self, I think. I think you're not.
You can't force yourself in the flow. The best way to get in the flow is to not to try to get in the flow.
That's right.
The best way to write a book after 20 years is stop trying to write a book.
How long did it take you to write your new book, Unlocked?
Probably months, maybe. Well, it's a long story. It was a long process. I had to get a new collaborative writer, but it went pretty quick. Probably 6 months.
That's
something like
flowing.
that. 7 months.
Yeah. So best self, okay. And the way that you talk about stimulus and response, and in between, having the space to make choices that are aligned with I call it first principles, and you call it values, I think. So I'm interested in virtues and first principles, and those are kind of the bumpers to be able to navigate. Now let's go true self versus small self. So this is where I get sometimes confused about true self, is because right now, if I'm kind and loving, it's my true self. And also if I'm pissed off and agitated, it is my true self. It's not my highest self.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so is best self and true self and small self, do you say best and true are the same actually? And we're competing against small self?
Well, I want to just say that all of those are constructs. See, part of the issue we're having here is that we want to talk about the nonlinear in a linear way. So you can get tripped up with all of that, with this self and that self and whatever, but the only self I'm interested in all of them, but just to know when you're being true to yourself, to thine own self be true, you know when you're out of character and when you're in character. And you got to understand that we're human beings. Even who we say we are, we're changing.
Wait. You just said something cool. You said true to your character. Is that what you just said?
No, true to yourself.
True to yourself. But how'd you say it about character? You're in character.
Yeah, you're in character. In other words, like, if my intention is to be loving and I was just unloving, then all I need to do is just, you know better, you do better. How do I get back on track? Because a lot of these guidance missiles, these guidance systems, they have to do with negative feedback. So nothing's straight. It's zigzag. You get off, you get back on. That's what I mean. So you were out of love, get back into love. Okay, or get back into just fully, honestly expressing yourself. And you're going to get angry, you're going to get tripped up, but we can have these labels about it, but we are becoming. So even who we think we are, we're more than that. Like I just said to myself. So the idea is, it's helpful for me to talk about doing something that's helpful or not helpful, not to judge it. And to say when you're your true self, or when you're yourself where you get beyond the illusion of separateness. I and the other. Then that's what I'm talking about when you see I and the other one, and when you get beyond that illusion and you can just be. Now, there's times when that happens, like say 9/11, people run into the building, marathon bombing, people running towards the explosion, not away. When the young man, I forget his name, that had the heart attack in football. I mean,
Hamlin.
Yeah. Everybody went beyond. The game wasn't that important. Everybody went beyond that. We get beyond that. So the real question is, how can we have more of those experiences where we get back to what really counts, is like loving each other and competing, helping us compete with each other, bring the best out of each other, meaning competing in the right way based on values of not losing our humanity, but actually not, withholding, but actually, competing in a way where we're bringing out the best in each other. And so this is totally different. So when we have this best self, little self, small self, when I talk about being real or the big S, the big self, is when you realize that there's an illusion of separateness that we need to go beyond and realize that how I treat the other person is how I want to treat myself. So if I want love, I got to be love. If I want peace, I got to be peace. If I want kindness, I have to be kind. So if I'm being hostile to you, that's what's going to come back to me.
Yeah.
And so when I'm being hostile, when I have those hindrances, there's no ability to be present and to see clearly. So obviously, I'm not being my true self. If the true self is knowing the truth and letting the truth make you free. In other words, just seeing the other person as a spirit, somebody has a masterpiece, somebody who wants to be happy just like I do, somebody who suffers like I do. We have to get to that point. Now, that might sound Pollyanna-ish, but one reason I relate to people and I relate to you, I'm relating to your masterpiece. I'm not relating to your persona. Mm-hmm. And so you might say, but what I'm talking about is the greatness that's inside of you. I'm embracing that. If I embrace it in you, I'm going to embrace it in me. It doesn't mean we don't have struggle or conflicts or we don't have disagreements. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about honoring that you're seeing things the way you're seeing things. And if I saw things the way that you saw things, I see what you were seeing.
That's what's up.
So we have to get to that point where we realize that that's why it's important to be able to get out of the box and just notice and just say, okay, so how might Mike be feeling? And if I saw, how is he seeing things? And once I see how you're seeing things, everything's clear.
Is this how you work across teams? Helping to create this stitching between people?
It all depends. It all depends. In other words, this is part of my repertoire. It's part of what I do. But here's the thing, and when I went on my book tour for the Mindful Athlete, people got frustrated with me because they wanted me to give them a formula. And the formula is there is no formula. Just being present and letting things speak to you. And then out of that insight, now you're acting, because once you see clearly, you can behave clearly. So good actions need good images or good understanding of what's happening. Great actions need great images, needs more clarity.
Let's do great teams for a minute.
Okay.
What is your understanding of a great team? And before I make an assumption, have you been part of great teams?
Yes.
Yeah. I've seen winning teams, but it doesn't mean they're great.
Yes. Great teams.
Great teams. Okay.
Yeah.
So what is your understanding of, let's do 2 parts to it, the becoming of a great team and the expression of a great team. And you can please start in either way.
Well, you have to have shared values, obviously. So core values and a worthy cause are really important. That's it.
Is winning enough?
No.
Yeah,
no.
Correct.
So I'll just take the Chicago Bulls for an example.
How many years were you with them?
5.
During which 5?
93 to 98. The second three-peat. Okay, so I was there when Jordan was going, and we had to pick up the pieces and keep it moving.
Yeah.
So I would say if you look at that, I like to use that, and hopefully Phil's okay with me sharing it. But when he took over from the Bulls, the first thing he had to do is get the team to understand that synergy, the whole is greater than some of the individual parts, and that when you're a great player, you make teams better. So he had to talk to them about sharing power and sharing vision. And so when he got them, there's a book called Tribal Leadership, and it talks about the 5 stages. So the 5 stages are life sucks. I'm going to put it that way. My life sucks is phase 2. Stage 2, where you get around other people who talk about how their life sucks. I'm great and you're not. That's like the glass ceiling. It's like anything that is a threat, I deny, I destroy, I remove. We're great, they're not. That's stage 4. And then stage 5 is life is great. So I summarize it, but that's basically it. So as a leader, those different levels are going to get you different results. So obviously, to win 3-peats, and I've been with teams that won 3-peats and came really close to winning a 4th 3-peat. It's about when your life is great, that's when you can sustain excellence for a sustained period of time. And so you could say that the Bulls were at stage 3 where when they won a championship, they weren't. But initially it was like Michael and Jordan. So it was, I'm great and you're not. That's first stage 3. So he had to take them from stage 3 to we're great and they're not, to stage 5, which life is great. And so the way you do that is you have core values and a worthy goal. This is how we're going to be together. We're sharing, like 5 fingers on the hand. We're going to support each other and all of that stuff. So you work on this commitment on values and a shared vision and that sort of thing. And so so you have to go from stage 3 to stage 4. We're great. And then when you get to stage 5, life is great. And if you can sustain that, that's how you 3-peat. Okay. And so, and you can see that that happens. And so you can have great teams, but what's the definition of a great team? The way the Celtics were winning, I grew up in Boston, so the way the Celtics were winning those 8 championships, my friends would say, well, the other team's better, but they lose. Well, Bill Russell said the best team always wins. So it's the synergy. It's you may not have the same quality of individual players, but how you support each other, how you play, how you share, not only value, but love and respect and all those things, but core values and a worthy cause. Everybody's in line with that cause. That cause is whatever that is. And so you need that to matriculate through those stages. You don't go from stage 3 to stage 5 right away. It takes time.
What do you do when somebody is a high earner? They're a high flyer. They are one of the best in the world at what they do. They're on the team, and the team has ambitions to be great.
Right.
But you've got an unreasonable, in some respects, because I think most of the best in the world are rather unreasonable. And I can explain that later. But when you've got an unreasonable, exacting, high standard, high commitment to excellence performer on the team, and they don't always play well with others. How do you work through that? And it's a larger question about what gets in the way of being a great team. And I'm just kind of narrowing it down.
Yes. Well, that person has to be willing to commit to the same core values. Like sharing the ball, player movement, ball movement, all of those things. And when you don't have that, then that's a problem.
What core values do you feel most aligned
Okay,
to?
let's use Steve's core values that I know he talks about.
Steve Kerr.
Steve Kerr. I think it's mindfulness, joy, compassion, competition.
That's it.
Okay. So those are sort of rules for engagement, you might say. And so, and you can see when they didn't win championships, they weren't enjoyed. Maybe they might not have right mindfulness. It might have been mindful of what's wrong, but they weren't playing with joy. They weren't compassionate, and they weren't competing. And so those values, so everybody has to be in alignment with that. And usually it can't come from the coach. It has to come from the individual. So it has to come from the grassroots. So when you do that and then you commit to those, then when something happens, those core values are going to kick in and say, okay, if I'm going to go trade for somebody, or if I'm going to draft somebody, if they don't have those core values, you shouldn't be drafting them.
So I was with helping a GM. This is a fun story, and the GM says, like we're walking through the draft, and people are going to try to guess the team, but they won't be able to do it. And he says, I think I might make a trade here, but I'm afraid I'm making a trade with the devil. There's a high talent, high flyer, and doesn't really fit, but I think we can get him to be part of the team. And I was like, oh boy, even the whole construct of it was problematic.
Mm-hmm.
It did not work out well.
Mm-hmm.
But I understand the temptation.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
I understand it. And so you would advise from the outset, if your intuition is going that direction.
Yeah, but this is not personal. This is about this. This is like if they're in line with your values, then that'll work. Or won't just, let me put it this way. Doesn't mean you're gonna win a championship, but it won't disrupt the team chemistry. And I have a lot of coaches say to me, I don't know what team chemistry is, but I know when I have it.
How about it? And I know when I don't have it. Because
yeah, we're all
talking about it.
Yes,
yeah, we know we're talking.
Yeah. So it's really about, so this is the thing. It's the inside game, right? It's about having people that align with your values and they're interested in the worthy, because they might be just interested in just scoring a lot of points or making a lot of money. You have to get clear about that.
So how does a high-performing team take place? You say, we're going to work on shared values and clear goals.
Yeah.
I think you used...
Yeah, but you need integrity, people with integrity, and learners, Phil likes learners, people who are willing to be flexible and want to learn. And that, to me, I'll put it this way, and I was talking to somebody about this, don't compete, create.
That's unbelievable. You just said that. It was the name of my former company. That's unbelievable. Yeah.
I'll just say, right. But I'm just saying, so when you get people, you have to figure out, and there's, the book by the All Blacks, I forget the name of the title of the book, but they had a chemistry problem that you gotta have, sweeping the sheds. Everybody does certain things. You have to understand. Legacy, I think, is the name of the book.
So just really quickly on that, is that friendly with some of the coaching staff there.
Okay.
And enough of them won't read that book.
Interesting.
That I haven't read it.
Okay.
And so there was I don't think this is wildly known, but they didn't feel like it was captured in the right way. And so I haven't read it. Yeah. And I've heard there's a lot of good in there.
Yeah, there's a lot of good in there.
And
but it could have been better, is what you're saying.
No, that it was a little dubious on how it happened.
Gotcha.
And listen, I don't know the author. I don't even know the author's name.
Right.
And I'm not saying it's the author, but there was something there that enough of them were like, we're not reading that thing. I was like, well, all right.
Well, that's unfortunate, because sometimes, it's hard to know what people's thinking is. What goes on behind the scenes and whatnot. Yeah. And it's interesting because truth is universal.
That's a shared language.
Yes, and like I go on principles. Why? Because principles are timeless and self-evident, and they don't change.
How do you help people clarify their principles that matter most to them?
But they got to go inside.
That's right.
Be still and know this was their heart. So their mind, body, heart, and soul has to be in alignment. So they have to exercise all four aspects of their being. Like physically, we get that. Mentally, got to get that one. The heart, emotions and relationships, and the spirit or the soul, contribution and meaning, all of that stuff is really important. And so I'd say you got to start with the person knowing who they are. So I would say,
do you know how long that takes?
Yes.
Oh I agree with you. I'm laughing.
Yeah. But here's the thing.
That's ongoing.
But here's the thing. Even if you don't know who you are, if you're aligned with principles, you'll get there.
How about it?
If we just talk about love or whatever, but here's the thing. The thing is, you got to at least know, number one, you got to accept personal responsibility, and two, know that you make choices. Even if you don't make a choice, you're making a choice. So you got to start with those two. And then you got to be willing to look at your stuff, the good, the bad, the ugly, and understand what you do well and leverage that, and what you need to, improve on to do that. But I would say my formula is you got to know yourself, to be yourself, to express yourself, to share yourself.
Something I talk about a bunch is that, I want to be an honest man.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so honesty is a principle that matters to me.
Mm-hmm.
And honesty with myself, honesty with others. And sometimes it's hard, and it's probably unbecoming to say that, but I want to present a certain way. I don't always want to face the hard truth. and so there's easy ways to navigate through being dishonest, which isn't immoral or egregious, but it's like not confronting the thing that needs to be maybe confronted. That would be, to me, dishonest.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm not saying like lying about something, but just not being fully committed to the hard experience. Mm-hmm. Okay. So honesty is one. And then there's other ones that I'm practicing as well. Creating is a first principle. Kindness is a first principle for me. And I can go on and share a couple others. Those are the ones I'm practicing now. I can practice them for a while, and then I can practice a whole 3 or 5 other ones. So for me, it's not permanent. It doesn't mean that I'm shape shifting. It means that I'm picking a couple that I'm finding are going to have high value and high attunement for me right now. And I want to get better at them. And then I could insert another one later. When I say that to you, what happens for you? Do you say, oh yeah, that sounds like a good approach?
Self-honesty is where the confidence comes from.
Oh, that's
self-honesty is the most important thing. Know the truth shall make you free, and do thine own self be true. So even if we're not being honest with ourselves and we're presenting, there's a lack of integrity. Integrity is power, or integrity is workability. So being integrous or having integrity was mean saying what you mean and meaning what you say.
If you line up your thoughts, words, and actions, I think those are the most powerful people. And you're talking about integrity, that alignment.
Yeah. So it's like if the bridge doesn't have integrity, you're not going to drive over it.
Yeah. And if your teammate or partner doesn't have integrity, you're not going to roll with it as well.
Yeah. Or you have to understand, you got to verify, but even though you have to have faith, but you have to verify it. But there's something about trusting and helping people by mirroring, by being the billboard on integrity or trust and honesty, being honest even when it's hard to be honest. But at the same time, it's a process, a work in process. But I think the most important thing is to know when you're not being honest and what impact it has on you. See, because that's the teaching right there. Not that you should or, you want to be an honest man. It's more about you notice that honesty is the best policy, especially self-honesty is so huge that without the self-honesty, then you can't be honest. I mean, that's really important. And these are not easy things, but like I like to say, no struggle, no swag. You got to work for this. It's not something, I got swag, I earned it. So you got to earn it. You can't just get it. You got to earn it, because if it's not true swag, and if it's not true swag, then you're not going to have the power. You're not going to have the presence.
That's right.
Of being able to do things.
As soon as you poke somebody like that, it kind of falls into 1,000 pieces if it's not honest. Fake it till you make it.
You fake it, you might not make it. It's really simple. Act as if. Fake it if you make it, you won't make it. And you're already telling yourself it's a lie. So your subconscious is going to be relating to it like you're not worthy and it's not doable. So fake it till you make it is a poor substitute. The real deal is to act as if.
My skin crawls when I hear the phrase "fake it till you make it."
Mm-hmm.
Fake what? Fake a principle.
Right.
Fake yourself.
Right.
Fake an attitude. Like, I don't want a fake handbag. I don't want I don't want anything fake. There's nothing that's gonna hold up and be durable enough as a fake. And so that idea, anyone listening to this right now, like, George, I'm nodding my head. That's a whack way to go through life. And so I'm saying the same thing, that it's a tragedy that people are considering that that's the way to get through, to get over. Mm-hmm. All you're doing is getting over on yourself and practicing a way that is leading you further away from authenticity.
Right. That's a lockdown.
That's a lockdown. Those are 4 cold walls, aren't they? Yeah. All right. So, good. Who do you know that is incredibly honest, that is one of the best in the world, that holds that emblem at the forefront?
Well, I don't know if I can answer that, because I don't know all the information. But I mean, as far as them being able to speak and just, it seems to align. I think there's moments of honesty. I don't think you can say one person is totally honest and is it emblematic of the honest. Now I got to start talking about the Buddha and Jesus Christ and folks like that. But I feel like if my intention is to be honest, right? I probably know myself better than anybody else, and I say, on a good day I can do it. But there's moments when you can't, especially when it comes to family or whatever. But to me, it's not so much of being honest; it's the intention of being honest. And when you're not honest, to learn from it and to correct it. See, because we had this thing about integrity. When we get out of integrity, they were always out of integrity, and you can't trust that person. I'm here to say that when you're out of integrity, all you got to do is get back in integrity. It's that simple.
If Phil Jackson was here, who I know you have a long relationship with, how would he insert himself or be part of this conversation? What would he add to this conversation?
He'd probably be kind of saying what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you guys have a rich partnership, don't you?
Yes, we have 30 years.
How fun is that?
Yeah, it's cool. And it's keeping, and that's the thing about having friends, because we have blind spots like our cars, and having friends that are able to call us on our stuff and say, hey man, what's up with that? It's interesting. Several years back, my roommates in college were obviously Julius Erving, Dr. J, and Al Skinner. And Skinner was coaching at Kennesaw State.
It's crazy to drop that in there.
Yeah, it's good. But anyway,
it's crazy to drop that in.
I hadn't seen Doc in a while, so we were all at the game. And after the game, we're talking, and we go back to like college, and there's this holding each other accountable where Jay said something like, yo, man, you left that dude in your game. I'm glad you took him out. I just say, come on, man, take him out. He's not doing it. So that's how, and I'm not saying that to violate any privacy or anything, but what I'm saying is we still hold each other accountable to this day. Yo, man, that was great, man. Keep doing it. But, come on, man, that was lame. What's up with that? Mm-hmm. You see what I'm saying? So these young folks, it's like if you're friends, you don't, and it's not confronting with hostility. It's like laughing and saying, come on, man. You representing.
My wife checks me all the time with it. She's like, hey, just make sure that you're being honest, because we've been married 35 years. So like there's a depth there. She says, as you grow, people might not want to be as honest with you. And so like I crave it. Mm-hmm. And I hope that my ego and my fragility in life don't get in the way of it, and like people feel that and they're like, no, this is an invitation to anyone that's listening to please be honest.
Yeah, but here's the thing: when you're not honest, you can learn from it and get back in integrity.
That's cool.
One of the things that Maya Angelou, I learned a lot from her, but one of the things she said that's real powerful is when you know better, you do better.
So if I give you a couple quick hits, like reductionist types of thoughts, which one word to one sentence answers, which I'm going to put some golden handcuffs on you now.
Okay.
All right. These are going to be hard for you, okay? But maybe not. It all comes down to
being in the moment and being yourself.
My vision is
to be loving with a warrior spirit, with a serving and compassionate heart, pursuing excellence and wisdom with grace and ease.
If leaders knew what I knew, they would
share power and get out of the way.
If the next generation knew what I knew, they would
be still and know who they are.
You're doing pretty damn good here. If parents knew what I knew,
they would be the message and let go so that kids can grow.
Limiting beliefs are
being locked up.
The place that I want to be, but I don't have permission to be is?
I don't think that's true.
Cool.
I think I can want to be places. It doesn't mean I can't get there, but then where I want to be might not be where I'm supposed to be.
Where do you want to drive people to?
People can go to my website, georgemumford.com, but also if they're interested, they can go online and pre-order my book. I know Amazon, and I don't know the other places, but I know definitely Amazon, you can pre-order at a discount, I believe.
Unlocked. By George Mumford. The George Mumford. And the website one more time is?
It's georgemumford.com.
George, what a gift. What a treat to sit down with you and do it in this forum and to hear your wisdoms just roll at the end like that, the depth in the conversation. You're an honest man. And I want to say thank you for the contributions you've made in my life and so many people's lives, and the writings, and more importantly, the presence that you bring into the places that you go.
Yeah. Well,
So,
I love you, brother. So
thank you,
that's
George.
how I want to leave it with you.
Oh my goodness.
Okay.
Thank you, George.
All right.
Love you.
Love you too. All right.